I thought it'd be good to go over how hands play out in different positions, especially on the rivers, where there's really the biggest variance in the play, and there can be quite a big EV difference if you play the rivers better or worse in some spots. It's helpful to know what you can get away with in some spots and what you can't really get away with. So I decided to pick one example that's like a pretty common board that just to show like how the hand may play out from different positions and to show how the sim splits its ranges based on the positions and based on like a few subtle differences such as that. Because if you can understand that and understand enough boards like this, then you can basically crush. I mean, this is like pretty far above par for most people in the competition. I just picked under the gun versus the button to start with, early position versus late position to start with. And we're going to be going over a few different rivers, not just the 10 in a few different spots, but we'll start with the 10 because it's up already and it's like not really a great river. Do you guys know why it's not really a great river for the original better in the spot versus for early position versus the button? It's because King 10 now beats a lot of these hands that you had that dominated their range, such as like Ace King and Aces. 9-10 also beats it, and 8-7 got there. So a lot of things kind of got there. It's really like mediocre card really to see on the river. So on the 10, a lot of these spots, there's in a lot of these spots where we get to the river and we barrel whatever size on the flop and turn. We're actually supposed to barrel the turn a little bit smaller than usual in the spot just because ranges are a bit tighter and the imposition guy can actually in theory have Ace King sometimes, but rarely. Yeah, when we get to this river on the 10, there's not going to be too much crazy stuff going on, but apparently the solver does like some spice with hands such as 6-5, 7-6 suited, etc., where we can do some overbats and some goofy things, but mostly it likes like a smaller size, a thin value bet for like a third pot or whatever, or even 2/3 pot is okay. But a lot of the time it likes to not go too thin with these spots. The 10's just not really a great card, but we're gonna look at some bricks too. You guys have any idea of what might happen on a real brick like a 2? Or a 3 or a 5. Well, 5 is not a total brick because 8-7 got there, or a 4. Do you guys think we're going to be using some larger sizes? What kind of sizes we're using on these kinds of cards, assuming we're just triple barreling?
I think on a brick river, we'll use very big sizes because we'll have a bigger nut advantage.
I think it's not going to be that big because ranges are so tight that it's not that hard to have sets and King 9 suited. So it will pick larger sizes, my guess, but not super big, like not any bigger than 150% pot is my guess. I don't know if it's going to go over 200% pot, but because we bet kind of smaller earlier, it might. I think it may do this in other situations, but not early position versus button. But let's take a look. Let's change this river to a 2. It's a very important kind of card for us. It's got more overbets. Yeah, it's got some actual 2.8x. It looks like. No, it's got almost like 140% or so. It's got 28 and a 21.6. No, it's a little less, 133%-ish. With some combos such as Ace 3 suited, etc. And aces, yeah, you can do that. But you can't do that with, it looks like you can't do it really with Ace King. And I think the reason for that is the other guy can have Ace King, and because it takes away too many of the kings in the first place. That's another thing that's kind of subtle about this board, and you have to pay attention to these sort of subtleties. Is that the in-position player doesn't have that many kings. Maybe they're supposed to have king, queen offsuit. That's hands like kind of borderline. Let me see. We'll check that in a second. But there's not that many suited kings, for example. Okay, so it's not as aggressive as I thought. It's still betting like 70%. That's pretty aggressive. But yeah, there's some overbetting going on. Not that much. We'll see what happens if... I thought King Queen also is a fold in the spot, actually, pre-flop. Oh, no, it's 6 max, so that's why. Okay, so it does have some King Queen. So yeah, because of King Queen, now there's quite a few combinations. Interesting that these hands are calls. That surprises me. Versus like 2/3 bet. I did not know that. Even like 7s, etc. is borderline. So we can see actually there's like potential for exploit. I don't think a lot of people call a lot of these hands. But yeah, let's look at another card. What do you guys think happens on an ace in this spot?
Keep betting, but maybe not so big, like half to 3/4 maybe.
I think with some combos that will happen, but I think that it will not use such a big size a lot of the time. I think it will bet pretty frequently though. Do you know why that might be? It's a bit tricky a lot of these spots, but it's important to think about these things so you don't have to rely on the sims, and if you can predict roughly what it does, let's a lot more useful than memorizing charts and stuff like that. I think it's going to bet really frequently, and I think it's going to not use a large size, again, because there are a handful of combinations of sets or whatever. We can look at the distribution in a second. And yeah, we have quite a few value bets now. It's similar to some other spots where like the turn was an ace in a 3-bet pot that we looked at in other lessons, and we would bet like near 100% on the turn just because, but a small size just because the ace was just that disastrous of a card. But yeah, we have a lot of ace X, they don't, and it's a bit of a pigeonhole spot. So let's take a look. All right, so it's gonna bet, yeah, huge percentage of the time and not a very large size, either the 1/3 pot or 2/3 pot, 90-something% of the time. For some reason, it doesn't bet jacks and offsuit, which is strange. It doesn't bet jacks, which is not a surprise. Bets pocket tens, which is funny. So I wouldn't really want to look at the range of the button because I think it has a set, etc., a bit more than one might expect, and it has 2-pair kind of a lot. That's interesting. Let's take a look at that. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think of that. It's got a lot of ace-6 and stuff like that. I thought I had a lot of sets, to be honest. But no, it only has sets about 3% of the time. I thought it was going to be closer to like 8 or something, frankly. It doesn't really have a whole lot of ace-x. You can see that. It's got quite a few king-x, 20% of the time. That's actually more than I thought it would have. This is assuming like a 2/3 size on the turn. 2/3 bet size on the turn. They should call it that. Just a normal size on the turn. Yeah, a lot of bullshit, really. But it's got about 17% almost to the nuts. So yeah, that's pretty much why. There's a lot of weak hands in there. Still a lot of hands that can raise, and that's pretty much it, which is the king. And show you guys that real quickly. King's a bit of a weird card too, but I think it's going to be kind of similar to this ace X situation a lot because we can value bet really a lot of hands, presuming we continue with like jacks and queens and stuff like that. I think we can't be quite as frequently betting just because we don't have it that much. We still have lots of air balls and stuff, but it will still bet like over 60% of the time, and a bit of a similar situation to the ace-x spot, except that the imposition player does a lot of kings, and those are effectively the nuts. So let's see. Let's see what under the gun does. All right, so it actually bets 50% of the time. That's interesting. It checks and traps some hands. It's kind of interesting. I guess it's because it expects the imposition player to bet 8-7 and queen jack or whatever if it has that. Go for some check raises. And I guess, yeah, we just don't have it that much is really the issue. Interesting that 2 queens continues to bet 2/3 pot, actually. Yeah, 2/3 pot is better than check. Do you guys know why that would be? And jacks does not bet, even though queens is always 3-bet. Do you know why that is, guys? Why queens continues to bet on a king river versus 2 jacks?
Stop making the same mistakes because nobody's watching your actual play. At Dojo Live, you're not sitting around learning useless theory. You're applying real practical techniques that work on the table, and I'll be there guiding you myself. Dojo Live takes place in Dallas, Texas, November 15th through the 17th. There's only 20 seats available. That's it.
Firstly, I want to reiterate that it's interesting that it does continue to bet on the turn some small percentage of the time. It looks like a very small percentage of the time, but by this like little sliver, I personally don't bet on the turn. But the reason is pretty clearly because we block king queen. Like that's got to be it because imposition has king queen offsuit, but it doesn't have king jack offsuit. Under the gun versus button, but is not really a capped situation spot to attack for the most part. There are some runouts where you can do that, but it's really where it bricks off. And the problem is that the other guy's range is a bit too strong and your range isn't like that much stronger than their range. And so most of the sizes will tend to be normal sizes. And if we were to look at more of the permutations of other ways that this hand might play out, which is a topic that's really interesting, actually, we should do that at some point. We'll find that the ranges are fairly balanced on this board for most spots, except for a few runouts, as we just discussed. And so there should be like a handful of trapping, and there's potential for a bit more creativity if people have some extreme possibilities, extreme tendencies in other kinds of lines that we may potentially take.